Hi, everybody. Cindy Skalicki here with On Point Communications, bringing you another episode of Getting to the Point. If you're new to this show, what is Getting to the Point? This is an awesome interview series that I started at the beginning of COVID, where I bring in experts who are amazing at their zones of brilliance. And I offer you a chance to climb inside their brains and pull out some really great tools that you can use right now, today, in your zone, wherever you are. And today, I'm super excited to bring to you Reuben Swartz. Welcome, Reuben.
Thanks for having me, Cindy. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Reuben and I met through a group we're a part of at LinkedIn and through a few connections that we have there. And we've probably been in that group for about a year at least. Would you say, Reuben?
I can't remember. Gosh, it might be it. My
Yeah,
sense of time is so warped, but I remember,
right?
I think we got connected through Ellen Melko Moore, who came on
Yeah.
my podcast. And
Yeah.
gosh, that was like last summer, I think.
Yep, I know I've been in with that group for a year, and it's just been such a fun time getting to know each of the members and having many calls already with you about your areas, which is why I invited you to come on. So for those of you who have not yet met Reuben, I invite you to connect with him right now at LinkedIn and to know that he is a software engineer. He's done incredible things with enterprise level companies in his previous life, building enormous systems, which he can tell us more about. But he's recently gone out on his own and he's developed a new product called Mimiran, which we're going to dive into a little bit. But we're also going to hit on his three key points today, because we always do things in threes on our show. And we're going to talk about helping versus selling, teaching versus marketing, and connecting instead of networking, and what the difference really is in those terms. So Reuben, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what gets you really charged up and excited about the work that you do.
Well, it's interesting trying to put this story together because sometimes the narrative only makes sense in retrospect. It certainly wasn't a grand strategic plan. I never could have seen myself in this place at any point in my life, which I think is kind of the point.
Right.
Right? Like that's what I want. I want to end up somewhere, hopefully good, that
Mhm.
I couldn't have even imagined earlier.
Mhm.
And one of the great things about what I do, I get to keep using my software development skills, but I also get to use skills to directly help people. I'm not just hiding behind a monitor, which I used to consider sort of the ideal. And then
Mhm.
I realized back in my enterprise software days, when I would get dragged out to the sales calls or dragged out to help with implementations, that was actually where the interesting hard work really occurred. As much as us software
Mhm.
people like to think that the software is so fancy and complicated and you have to be so smart or whatever, that's
Mhm.
the easy part of the equation, right? It's the people. How do you get the people to change and do something different and better and be happier and so on? And so I started out on my own thinking that if we could combine the software side of things and the strategy side and the business process side of things and actually have them all in alignment, we could get better results for less time and money and energy invested.
Mhm.
And the irony was I was helping these giant Fortune 500 companies to do sales and marketing better. And I like to think we did a good job because we got good word of mouth, we got repeat business, we got referrals, but we were really bad at doing our own sales and marketing. And it was very,
Problem
very
is kids
ironic.
never have their own shoes, right?
I mean, I have a slide in sort of my standard deck that has the Alanis Morissette ironic cover on it.
Yes, isn't it ironic? Yes.
So it was sort of a very strange journey. And I realized eventually that I was absorbing the wrong lessons from these very successful companies. If you got
Oh.
a sales team with 5,000 people, 4,000 of whom aren't going to be there in 3 years, it's a very different game than if you're out there selling your own services and you're also responsible for implementing them. And I had
Yeah.
picked up a bunch of bad images of sales, the usual ones that we have in our heads, but sort of extra because I would be the person who would get dragged out on the sales call, hear all kinds of crazy promises the sales team was making, and then be
Oh.
responsible for delivering it later. And I was like, oh, this is terrible.
Why
Right.
did
I
you
don't want to
say
be
we could
so
do that?
right.
Right. Yeah.
So the nice thing is I sort of eventually, after years of struggle, I was just like, this is really dumb. If I forget that I'm in a sales meeting and I just talk to somebody about the problem that we're talking about, we have this great conversation and
Mhm.
we're both excited. There's good energy. They want to work with me or they want to refer me or whatever it is. And then if suddenly I'm like, oh gosh, I'm in a sales meeting, everything gets all awkward and it gets weird and it's not effective.
Right.
And so I thought, wait a second, this is my company, right? I started this so I could do things the way I wanted. Why am I trying to do things? Why am I trying to impersonate somebody else?
Right.
Let me stop selling. I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob Berg, Go Giver author, he was on my podcast recently. He told me, Reuben, you don't actually hate selling. You hate what you mistakenly think it is. And technically he is correct, but it's just easier for me to be like, nope, I'm not going to sell anymore. I'm just going to help people.
You hate slimy selling. That's what you hate. You hate slimy sales, cold calling, which is the image most of us have of selling, right? But if we turn that over and say selling is relationship building and serving, then we all like to do those things, right? I think that's the point.
That's exactly it. When we have an experience where we feel like we're being sold to, we don't enjoy that very much.
Yeah. And people are so good at detecting that. Sorry. Yeah.
Right. It immediately puts everyone in a weird, awkward situation. Mm-hmm. But we've also had experiences where we wanted to buy something and someone awesome helped us and solved our problem. And we thought the whole experience was great. And it didn't even feel like selling, right? They were just helping us buy. Right. And so I think that's the mindset that so many people need to get in. And it took me a long time to get there. So my mission is to try to help people learn the easy way, what I had to learn the hard way.
Okay. Cut corners, get us there faster, right?
Cut corners.
Perfect. Okay, Reuben, for people who don't know you, tell them what you now do for your small business. What is the service or product that you have created and provide so that when we go into our 3 points, we have context?
Sure. So I never intended to do this, but I accidentally created the anti-CRM for solo consultants who love serving clients, but hate selling. It's really the CRM that I'd wished I'd had when I was struggling with Salesforce and some of the more traditional tools, when I was trying to build my consulting practice. And everything just felt wrong. And I felt like I must be an idiot because it wasn't working for me. And I started just developing little tools for myself to make my life easier. Mm-hmm. And then I would tell people about them. They were like, oh, can I have some of that? And so I turned it from a tool into a platform and people kept asking for more stuff. And I never intended really to build a whole CRM. I kept looking for solutions that I could recommend to other people and that I could use myself. And I couldn't find what this tribe needed. Yes. There's a ton of stuff out there that if you just need an email address and a bunch of marketing automation, there's great tools. Right. You got a big sales team, there's great tools. But if you're spending most of your time helping clients and you need to do the sales and marketing and business development and partnership stuff in your quote unquote spare time without losing your mind and without feeling icky, I was like, I never set out to do this. Right. But eventually my customers said, you got to do this because go build that. Yeah. Well, that's what's so cool about Reuben, everybody, is that he has this awesome experience of, years and years of building software. And now he ran into this problem he saw in the marketplace that he could fix by building the software. So if you are new to your own business, a CRM, which stands for, Reuben? Customer Relationship Management. Basically keeping track of all the people outside your company and your business. Yeah, there's so many tools out there. There's Pipedrive, there's all kinds of stuff out there. But Reuben, his point is they're not getting all of it done for people that that are in the places that we are in as early stage, growing, scaling small companies, right? Is that kind of your sweet spot, Reuben? Well, my sweet spot is really solo people, or it's people who they may not be solo, but they have one or two founders who do all the sales. In other words, they don't have a sales team. The people who are doing the selling are the same ones that actually have to go do the delivery. Got it. Okay, awesome. We're diving in. Let's go to our first point around helping versus selling, and tell me what you want us to pick up from that first point. Well, again, I absorbed a lot of the wrong lessons about what sales is, but we all have that image of the slimy salesperson in our head. We can conjure that instantly. And basically it's somebody who wants to make a buck off us, regardless of whether it's right for us. Right? Imagine going into the doctor's office and you're like, hey, I've got a sore knee. And they're like, great, let's prep you for surgery. Right. We would run out of that doctor's office. If we could run, we would. Crawl if we had to, right? We expect the doctor to figure out what's wrong with us first and recommend a course of action that's best for us, not best for them.
Yeah.
right? Which could be go home and do some stretches. It could be see this other specialist. It could be go to physical therapy. It could be you need surgery. We don't know yet, but helping sort of that doctor's perspective, when we think of a doctor, because there are doctors who act like sales reps too. But when we conjure a doctor in our mind, we think of somebody who's helping, right? They diagnose first, they ask a lot of questions. And one of the things I realized was I was actually not asking enough questions to my business prospects. If I was talking to a friend, I was super nosy, not in a bad way, but it's like, I have to make sure that I really understand what Cindy's talking about, right? I'm not just going to be like, okay, she checks the boxes, I have happy years, send her the thing that I do. Right. It's like, I'm going to ask you so I really know, and we can really fix the root cause of this. But I'm not necessarily doing that in my business conversations. So let me make sure that I'm doing that, not out of a place of I'm trying to gain leverage or I'm trying to trick them in any way, but just I've got to be able to diagnose accurately so that I can help effectively.
Well, and I think you make a great point, because I've noticed this too in the last 6 months or so, as I got better at doing the discovery parts of sales and relationship building, right? You have to recognize that when someone comes to me, for example, and says, I have a team member who is, really struggling with filler words like, oh, so can you help me, Cindy? And I say, well, yes, I can. But if I ask 5, 6, or 7 more questions, I might uncover the fact that the whole team has other issues, and that there could be, systemic things that need to be addressed. Or it might be that this one person just needs a couple of coaching sessions. It might be a 12-month program for the whole company, but you don't know until you ask those questions. So helping instead of selling, giving value, right? I mean, there's so much around, you just become so much more human when you give some value at the beginning, right?
Right. And this isn't necessarily even at the beginning, all the way through to the end, to the signature on the proposal, and obviously in the actual delivery. But we want to think about this from their perspective. What would I do? And let's assume for a second that there's no money involved, right? If I just run into a friend who has these problems, or I get introduced by a friend, how do I treat this person? And what I realized was I was not being nearly helpful enough out of a fear of being too salesy.
Okay.
Right. It was that whole thing where I was like, oh my gosh, now I'm in a sales meeting. I have to act like a sales rep. Everything gets awkward, versus I'm here to help. I'm an expert at this particular type of problem. Let's dive in. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out what's really going on, the symptom behind the symptom behind the symptom to the root cause.
Yes. So what I'm hearing, and to kind of wrap this point up, so some people might be going, oh, I need to help more. In other words, I need to do certain tasks that are helpful. But I think what you might be saying is that it's more of a mindset shift of just always helping and having the mind frame ahead of you that in any case, you're really just going to be more around, helping people no matter where you are in the process. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. And I think particularly when it pertains to sales, instead of trying to close someone or convince someone to hand you a check, help them get the result they want.
Yes.
And then it becomes more like swimming downstream, and they're eager to get signed and get started.
Yeah, that's what we want to create. Perfect. So let's move to point 2, which is teaching versus marketing. Tell us what that means to you and what we might try so that our marketing is more teaching.
Sure. So this is another thing that I struggled with. So once I realized that helping was better than selling at the end of the sales cycle, I was still doing all that stuff about marketing and, oh, look at our methodology and all our great clients and how smart we think we are and so on. And it's not that any of that stuff is necessarily bad, but again, to go back to the doctor's office, they kind of have a little diploma that you can't even read, but and maybe they put a white coat on, but that's it. They don't spend all this time talking about how smart they are, hopefully.
Right. Hopefully.
So a lot of consultants, and certainly I was guilty of this, we very narcissistic. We talk about how great we are, and there's really nothing for the client or the prospect to grab onto and relate to. Like, okay, there's 100 websites with people talking about how great they are and how brilliant they are. But we want instead, kind of like you were saying earlier, we want to keep that helping mindset going. Instead of saying we're so smart, why don't we say, here's how to solve your problem? the kind of problem that you might pay me money to solve. We're going
Mm-hmm.
to start teaching you that right away
Mm-hmm.
on our website, on LinkedIn, on other social media, wherever it is, through speaking engagements, whatever. We're not just sort of giving you a little bit and then saying, if you really want any value, come sign up for me at this discounted rate if you sign now, kind of thing. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
let's go teach people to solve problems
Right.
because we're really good at that. And the
Right.
way I like to think of it is, say I'm going to build a deck, because that's something that everyone can relate to and most people can't do. I certainly can't do it, right? If I go search for how to build a deck and I get some instructions from a carpenter, I might be able to do, go back there and measure something, go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy some stuff. And then at some point it's like, okay, break out the saw and do this and that. And I'm like, okay, clearly I should stop before I cut something
Right.
off, right?
Above my pay grade, right?
Who am I going to call? Am I going to call the person who knows like the 100 steps I know I need to do to build a deck, or the person who's like, I'm so awesome at building decks?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm going to
Right.
call the person who's already started helping me, who already has demonstrated
Right.
that they really know this stuff. And the
Right.
nice thing about this is not only is this more effective sort of for that numeric lead gen stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but it really fits in with the personality of someone who has deep expertise and loves helping people in
Right.
their area of expertise. It's like, let's just do more of that. And so
Right.
we don't have sales and marketing as a necessary evil that leads to the client work. We have it as an extension of the client work, as an extension of the mission of service.
Mhm. I like that. I like that a lot. And one of the things that I'm thinking about while I hear you talk about these two terms is what most of our viewers probably do, which is post a lot of LinkedIn content that's maybe overly marketing messaging versus helping messaging. So is that part of where that fits in your mind? And can you talk to like on LinkedIn, what would you say is the difference between a post that is marketing versus teaching?
Well, for example, Cindy, you have all kinds of helpful content about how to prepare for a talk and what you should do and so on. So that's helping. If I
Right.
am preparing for a talk, I can be like, oh, that's pretty good. I should totally do that. And the seed is planted. And maybe at some point I call Cindy and I ask for a proposal. Maybe
Mhm.
not. Maybe I never do that, but
Mhm.
I'm getting value from that right away versus, hey, you should really hire me to coach your team to talk better. Right? Which one is
Right.
actually more compelling? It's almost like a Zen thing where the harder you try, the weaker the results
Yeah.
are.
Gotcha. I think that's exactly where my head was. And it's a fine line. And I think at least for social media purposes and all the loud chatter that's out there, the helping messages are way more resonant to people than the sign up for my webinar now, click this button kinds of things. But obviously you need a mix, but in order to attract, I think the helping is clearly the place to be. So,
Well, and it depends on the message behind the webinar, right? If the webinar is super helpful and compelling,
right.
that may be great too.
Right.
And I
For
think,
sure. And there's times and places to go ahead and share that you have that webinar going on because it's going to teach you something that you need to know. So, no, that's a great point. Anything to wrap up your second piece there, Reuben, that you want to drop before we move to our third point?
well, let's just move on to the third one because
Let's
we can
go.
always come back, but if we run
That's
out of
right.
time, we're in
Awesome.
trouble.
Okay. Third point, connecting versus networking. Talk to me a little about the differences there and what you want people to take away.
Well, I know for a lot of people, especially us introverts, networking is one of the least pleasant experiences we can have in the business world. It might even be worse than sales. And I certainly went through that experience myself. And it took me a long time to realize that I'm not in that room to make sales or even get leads or even get referrals. I'm just there to connect with other humans
Mm-hmm.
because even as an introvert, I actually like that part.
Right.
And part of it is about if I'm doing the right teaching and have the right positioning, I'm gonna end up in the right rooms where there are going to be interesting conversations, where there are going to be people who might be interested in being a customer or referring people and so on. So I think, and Ellen was the one who actually told me this term, you walk in a room and you start getting stabbed with business cards.
Oh yeah.
Right. Nobody wants that.
Nobody likes that.
But apparently some people like, and they're just so scared and nervous. It's not like they're trying to be jerks. I don't think they're just like, I'm in the room here, take a business card so I can leave. but that's not going to help anybody. All those business cards just go in the recycle bin anyway. So what we want to do is connect human to human with people that we enjoy talking to and build relationships, right? If you had told me 6 months ago, whenever we started talking, that we're going to be on a podcast together, I wouldn't have expected that. And if I had set out with the goal of, I want to get on Cindy's podcast, right? And I had like pushed that, it probably wouldn't work. But I was like, let me just get to know Cindy a little bit.
Right.
And you were the same way reciprocally. So when that happens, the right relationships kind of bubble up.
Right.
And I think it's important not just to think of networking as I'm going to go to this room, either in person or virtually, and there's going to be a bunch of other people there that I collect cards from, but that I'm building and most importantly, nurturing relationships over time.
Yeah.
So people spend so much time, oh, I went to a luncheon and I got 10 business cards, or I went to a trade show and got 300 business cards, or whatever it is. Okay. A year later, how many of those people are you still talking to?
Right. And, you know, I actually sort of flipped the script on business cards, which of course we haven't used very much at all in the last year and a half. But when I carry those with me to an event, I will sometimes wait. And I feel like if someone asks me for mine, then I have done a good job and they want to stay connected to me, instead of me being like, here's my business card, you know, at every turn. It's just so blatantly salesy in my view, and in most people's view, I would say. So it should be the exclamation point of your encounter.
Right. And then the important part is actually following up with the people you want to follow up with.
Right.
So many people go to these events, they exert so much time and energy and money. And I can't tell you how much money I spent sponsoring booths at trade shows and things like that. And if you don't follow up, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. Right.
And so think of the actual networking event as sort of like the middle piece. There's a bunch of prep work ahead of time and a bunch of follow-up that happens afterwards. And I think one of the big mistakes solo consultants make is that they don't really define who they are and what they're about and who they help.
Right.
So they sort of have this wishy-washy networking experience. People aren't as jazzed to meet them as they might be. And they also end up meeting a bunch of people they're not really jazzed to meet because they know they're not a great fit. Right. And if you can really be laser focused on your zone of genius, as you would say, the right people are going to gravitate to that. And just as importantly, the people who are like, oh, Cindy's whole approach to public speaking is crazy, I'd never hire her. Right. That's great, because they're not going to bother you and argue with you and gum up your life. Right.
I mean, we're not all a good fit for everyone. There's no question about that. And half the battle is knowing that and accepting that and being okay with that. Right. So the connecting part is so critical. And then the staying connected is just the path toward whatever future relationship building activities, whether it's a sale or not, or a referral, or whatever it might be that you can do. So yeah, that's awesome. I do want to tee something up for you, because I want our audience to know a little tiny bit about what you have built, because I think if they know about where they are in their businesses and they want to take a look at what you have done, I know you'll offer a demo. So tell me about the moment or the storyline around when you finally did say, man, I've been asked by several people to do this thing, I'm going to do it. And tell me why is what you have done in Mimiran, what is it different? What does it do differently than what's out there? What's the piece that people watching need to know about that?
Sure. I think probably at a high level, if you think of some of these really popular tools like Salesforce is like flying the space shuttle. And if you need a space shuttle, that's it. Like, go get it. It's amazing. It's a technological marvel. And then you've got some other tools like HubSpot. That's like a 747. And most of us need a bicycle, right? Like we literally just need something that makes us 10x more efficient, that isn't super complicated, but also that we can park at the grocery store and come back with a handful of groceries. We can't park the 747 there. And so what I was running up against was I was just struggling to use these tools it was too much work. I felt like I was working for the tool instead of the tool was working for me.
Yeah,
And
got
then
it.
it didn't do certain things that I needed to do. I wanted to automate my proposals. I wanted to know when customers were reading them. I wanted them to be able to sign online.
Yes.
And I wanted to actually be able to get leads off my website and not just have, here's a PDF white paper or something like that, but to be able to tell when somebody reread that white paper next week, next month, whenever. So I might have another chance to call them. And that was something where some of the more popular tools, they're assuming you have a big sales team that's pounding the phones all the time, not that you have one person who suddenly got 15 minutes between meetings and might be able to connect with some prospects. And then what really convinced me, so I had those pieces and people kept saying, okay, I finally get leads off my website. This is great. And then I do the CRM thing in the middle, and then I can close them. And that's great. But God, I hate Salesforce. I hate Zoho. I hate my spreadsheet or whatever it is. And not to rag on any of those tools. They're amazing for the right people.
Right.
But they're like, can't you just make Mimiran do the part in the middle? Because I really like the Mimiran part and I hate the CRM part. And I was like, no. And I was trying all these different CRMs thinking there's got to be one out there. There's no way that I'm going to go do this. And the part that actually really drove me over the edge was, one, how do I track who's referred whom to me and did it lead to any business? Like, why isn't that just baked into the CRM?
Yeah.
Right. And then the other thing was some of that connection stuff we were talking about. Like,
Yep.
I don't want to stare at the list of all the people I know and wonder who I should call, because I've
Yes.
already spent too much time doing that. I want something
Yes.
that says, talk to Cindy right now,
Yes.
press a button to call her, take
Mhm.
your notes, hit save, have it automatically queue Cindy up to talk to later and go to the next person. Because I want to spend my time actually in conversation,
Yes.
actually connecting, and not like moving lists around, which is what I had been doing.
I love it. So some of the things you've included are automated. One of the things I forgot about was the automated proposal writing. So hi, everyone. Are you listening? If you want to automate your proposal writing, Reuben's got a way to do that. And then also if the read messages piece is just gold, knowing when someone has opened and read your proposal. Don't we all hate those times where we send an email or a proposal or a document and we're like, did they look? Did they read it? Did it get lost? And you can see what day and time they read it. And then you can pick the phone up an hour later and say, hey, just following up, just happened to be thinking of you at this moment. And when you're not sleazy around that process, it can be completely, it can feel really holistic for the person that you are in relationship with, I would imagine, right?
Well, it's funny because that whole thing was what started this whole crazy journey. I hated leaving those voicemails like, hey, just wondering if you got my proposal.
Yes, I remember your story about that. That's crazy.
Right. And it's like, that's literally, it was like, there's got to be a better way. And it's funny you talked about how it being holistic, because the first time I did this, I had that experience. Oh, I'm so glad you called. I was just reading your proposal. And we were able to like do some fine tweaking together on the phone and just get the thing done so that we could get to the work, which is what both me and the prospect actually cared about.
Right. Exactly. I love it. Well, for those of you watching, like I said, just grab a slot in Reuben's calendar and just get to know him first. And then if you have any curiosities around Mimiran, definitely he will show you a few things once he knows more about the problems you're trying to solve in your business and what kind of bicycle you need. Mimiran, tell us what it means, and then we'll go to our rapid fire question. I've got just one that I have time for today.
Sure. Well, when I was starting, it was a consulting company, and Mimir is the Norse god of wisdom. So I thought I was being super clever, and it turns out that no one can spell it or pronounce it. So it's not really great from a marketing perspective, but everyone asks, what the heck does it mean? And how do you say it? And how do you spell it? So I feel like it's a good sales name.
Totally. Well, I felt the same about using the term rhetoric. And it comes with kind of a weighty heaviness because most people only know it as political rhetoric. And so several people told me, like, don't even use that word, Cindy, just say persuasive or something like that. And I did not listen to them, and I'm glad that I did not. I find that people enjoy learning the theory part, and the hard stuff is kind of, it's been a good ride. So stick with Mimiran and use it in your storyline, and it makes for a great conversation piece for sure. Okay, thanks, Reuben. Those were three awesome points, and I'm excited that we got to crack those all open today. Your one rapid fire question today. Talk to me about like a mentor or someone who in your life family, coworker, boss, neighbor, someone who kind of, really had an impact on you. And if you had the moment right now to kind of tip your hat and say thank you to that person, like who really maybe quietly influenced you in any way that you would like to share with us
There's
about?
so many people who have tried to polish this rough stone over here. Far too many for a rapid fire question, but there's something that happened when I was probably in like ninth grade. My dad said something to me offhand that I ignored for decades, but he said, you should probably do something with computers and with people, because you have a sort of a mathematical mindset, but you can also talk to people. And sometimes the people don't have the mathematical mindset and vice versa. And I thought that's ridiculous, because I wasn't any good with computers and I didn't really think I liked people very much either. So I had no idea of like why he was even saying this. And it just disappeared from my mind for about 2 decades. And then I got to be older and doing what I do. And I was like, oh, maybe he was onto something. So thanks, Dad.
That's awesome. What a great story. I think there is something fun to hear anyone start with. When I was in ninth grade, I'm always perking my ears up to see what story we're going to hear, but that's awesome. It's like he had a premonition or something about you. And, parents and kids, we know them in certain and special ways. So that's awesome. Well, Reuben, thank you so much for being our guest today. Tell others how they can get a hold of you and find you. And then we'll wrap.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Cindy. It's been a great pleasure, and I hope this is helpful for people. My whole mission is to let people do things the easy way instead of the way I did it. And so you can find me at Mimiran.com. That's Mimiran.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Reuben Swartz, but maybe not. And you can also find me. I'm the host and chief nerd on the Sales for Nerds podcast.
Sales for Nerds podcast. Awesome. And that's a wonderful place to learn from other parts of Reuben's zone of brilliance that he's shared a little bit with us today. But thanks, Reuben. This has been super fun and really valuable. I encourage all of our listeners and viewers to head over to Mimiran.com and find him at LinkedIn. Tell him you saw this episode. Tell him which of our 3 points you liked the best, and then hop on his calendar for a meet and greet. He's not going to be slimy with you, I promise. And thanks for watching. Thanks, Reuben.
Thanks,
a wonderful
Cindy.
rest of your day. Yep. We'll see you guys next time on our next episode of Getting to the Point. In the meantime, get out there and nail it. Bye-bye.